A dad and a girl about 5 years old were standing in the window of a toy store. The girl was tearfully pointing at a teddy bear that looked sadly with its glass eyes at the people passing by. For a week, on her way back from kindergarten, the girl begged him to buy her this teddy bear, and today her father finally gave up. He did not like such toys and considered them a breeding ground for dust. But his daughter really pleaded, and literally dreamed of this bear. No, the girl was not a spoiled princess. It's just that when she saw the teddy bear's eyes, she thought he was about to cry, and she definitely wanted to take him home and introduce him to her dolls. On the way home, Grace, that was the girl's name, held the bear tightly to her and told him that she would take care of him from now on. Her father walked beside her and listened to his daughter's quiet chatter. She told the teddy bear about all her dolls, who will sit where while she was in kindergarten, and even prioritized who the teddy bear would play with while she was not home. Days went by. For days, all the other toys were forgotten. Her mom wondered what she found in an ordinary teddy bear. Grace ate with the teddy bear, watched cartoons with it. He waited for her on the edge of the tub while she bathed, and he always sat on her lap when they rode in the car. It had been a year. The family decided to go on a vacation to the sea. They bought a ticket and flew. They checked into a small family hotel on the first line away from tourist spots and beaches. The first days flew by unnoticed. They had not yet met anyone, greedily catching the sea and the sun, arranging their life. On the evening of the third day, Grace and her parents strolled along the beach. A woman with a boy about 8 years old were walking not far from them. Grace immediately ran to get acquainted. The girl's mother saw the woman squatting and explaining something to Grace. They came to and heard the woman explaining to Grace that the boy couldn't speak, but that he could hear and understand everything, and he spoke sign language. That's how they met. The woman's name was Dorothy and her son's name was Ben. It turned out that they were from the same country and lived in the same state. Since that evening, the two families began to spend a lot of time together, especially the children, who became very close friends. They talked a lot, discussed politics, life in general, the economy, and shared life stories. And Dorothy told them her life story. Many years ago she got married. She was just over 20 years old. She and her husband lived for themselves, traveling a lot. And when they thought about having children, it turned out that there were problems. Dorothy had many medical examinations, consulted different doctors, but she could not get pregnant. Her husband blamed her for this and left her after 10 years, saying a lot of nasty things and calling her defective. Dorothy herself believed that she was the problem and that she simply could not get pregnant. After her husband left, the woman took a long time to come to her senses. She was afraid to be alone because her husband was the first and only man in her life. She had not worked in an office for a long time. She was a translator by profession, but many years ago, her husband persuaded her to quit her job and take care of the house. At that time, she didn't know about her health problems and was going to devote herself to her home and children. Of course, she didn't quit her job completely. From time to time, she moonlighted on the freelance market. After all, translating was her favorite pastime. And now, after all these years, life had forced her to look for a job in an office. One day she was sitting in a cafe, looking through job openings on her phone. Suddenly a man stopped in front of her table and called her by name. There was something subtly familiar about the man. It turned out to be Tom, her high school admirer. He had been in love with her for the past 2 years of high school, and the whole class knew it. But Dorothy had no time for romance. She was getting ready to go to college and paid no attention to him. And then she went away to study in another city and never heard from Tom again. Dorothy noted with interest that Tom had changed a lot. He had changed from a lanky, shaggy-haired teenager who never missed a street fight to a handsome, gallant man. Tom ordered himself a coffee and they began to reminisce about high school life. When the man asked how Dorothy had lived all those years after high school, the woman didn't hold back and spilled everything to him. Tom hugged Dorothy and told her that her husband wasn't worth her little finger and that he wasn't a decent man. He also offered Dorothy a job as a translator for his company. He had just fired an unscrupulous employee who had passed on confidential information to competitors. Dorothy was delighted and accepted. A job in a new office, a good salary, a smart, handsome, and loyal boss. What else could be better? And after a short time, the working relationship smoothly turned into a personal one. Tom turned out to be a very attentive and caring man. He gave her flowers, gifts. They attended various interesting events together. After a while, Dorothy began to have morning sickness. At first, she thought she had eaten something tainted, but then the morning sickness started again and again. The woman became seriously worried and even suspected that she had cancer. A few weeks later, at a doctor's appointment, she was dumbfounded. It turned out she was pregnant. Dorothy asked the doctor to check everything several times. She just couldn't believe this could happen to her. She was infertile. But the doctor at the ultrasound showed the beating heart of her unborn child. In the evening, she told Tom everything. She thought he would be happy because they would have a child together. But the man accused her with anger in his voice that Dorothy had deceived him, that she had not used contraception. He slept in the living room that night, and in the morning, he didn't even say hello to Dorothy. They drove to work in silence too. Dorothy realized that this was the end of their relationship. That same day, she applied to leave, and in the evening, she packed her things and left, leaving the keys to Tom's apartment with the concierge. The woman decided everything for herself. She would go back to work as a freelancer, sell her apartment in the big city, move to a smaller town, and raise her child there in peace. And so it happened. She gave birth to a healthy, handsome boy, whom she named Ben. Ben became the center of her life, such a long-awaited and suffered child. She never saw Tom again. A few months after she left, he called and wanted to talk, but she refused and changed her phone number the next day. When Ben was 4 years old, Dorothy came to her hometown to visit her mother's grave. And as luck would have it, she met her ex-husband. He was drunk and almost choked with anger when he saw Dorothy with the child. In a fit of rage, he struck the woman, and then another and another. Ben screamed in terror, and several bystanders ran up and dragged her ex-husband away. Then the police arrived, and Ben clung to his mother crying. He had stopped talking ever since. Doctors said it all depended on chance. He may or may not talk. All treatment was just positive emotions and love. Dorothy told all this to Grace's parents over a cup of tea one evening at the sea. The girl's mother was very touched by this difficult story of a strong woman, and they never returned to the subject. And the children became very good friends. They played together, swam together, and went for ice cream. Their parents even jokingly began to call them bride and groom. But the vacation flew by unnoticed, and now it was time to leave. Grace cried when they said goodbye and didn't want to leave Ben. Then the girl handed the boy her favorite teddy bear. Ben knew how dear he was to Grace, and he didn't even want to take it. But the girl shook her head and said it was a gift from her. The bear would guard Ben and always remind him of her.